Okay, we are in the third marking period, and I have just finished reading the essays. I'm going to have to come up with some more screencasts. There's a lot of mistakes being made here. So I took a couple of sample thesis statements just at random, didn't select them for any particular reason. So I'm going to comment on some of them as we go to try to help you for your fourth marking period essay. The creation of rock and roll minimized racism by uniting black and white individuals. Minimized racism. I would like to see a little more information on that. By uniting black and white individuals through the use of the radio, prompting white teenagers to integrate with the black community and setting forth into their neighborhood, as well as the attendance of musical events. Okay, so this is just too much. All right, so now I get where they're going. I would say this section up to here, that right there is your thesis. That's it. There's enough. Students are having a huge time with breaking down information and really using their sources. You can just write about this one issue. Give me examples of what's going on with the radio. That would help. I mean, if the radio is the radio station, if they're doing, music festivals or events, that could be an example of what they're arguing here. I don't know, but what I do know, prompting white teenagers to integrate with the black community. I don't necessarily know how this section is going to take place. So that could be a thesis statement within itself. And setting forth into their neighborhoods. So I guess that's a combination of this. So they're white are going into black neighborhoods, okay, as well as the attendance of music events. Okay, so that's another thing. During, with rock and roll, so we have rock and roll, and now we see black and white going to concerts together. But how are you going to support that this is uniting? Remember their key word right here, uniting. Are you going to give me surveys? Is there any data? These are all questions that are going to be, that I'm going to want to know more information about. So I would definitely say this is just too much. There's too much going on here. Let's move on. The Cold War in 1947 used fear to initially prompt the use of internet solely for military and government officials to surveil Russia. So what are we saying? That the internet was designed for surveillance on Russia? That's one way. I don't think that's right. That's wrong. ARPANET is a communication tool. But as researchers began to utilize, so which researchers are we talking about? Computers for communicating with scientists, and now they're talking about communicating with scientists. It led to the birth of the ARPANET. All right, so now this is just wrong here. Am I supposed to, take into consideration that these events right here led to the birth of the ARPANET? The ARPANET is a Cold War communication initiative. And you're going to see a bunch of institutions, colleges, military working to create a network of computers simply to communicate in case there's a nuclear war. It's way too much stuff going on here. The ARPANET was created as a Cold War tool for the purpose of communication, and move on. If you're going to talk about the specific scientists or the government officials, then mention them in the thesis and tell me specifically what they did. Otherwise, I'm going to say it's too much. Cold War was an important influence. This is vague. It's up to you. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't important. On U.S. politics was an important influence. I would ask the question, how is it? What specific info do you have? Positive and negative impacts it had on American society. This right here is debatable. On American society. So it looks like they want to write that the Cold War influenced American society. But you can't make a judgment, say, what's good or bad. The Cold War influenced U.S. politics by the Cold War influenced U.S. politics and society by, and what are your points? What are you going to argue? Give me your reasons. What exactly did it do? You need to break this down. As written, that's just way too vague. I don't know what you're talking about there. In the 1960s, a network of computers was created as a government project known as ARPANET to help with communication during the Cold War. Boom, end right there. By the late 1980s, it progressed into becoming the internet. I don't need to know this. You can end. It was created for the Cold War, and then you give me, government policy, give me budget numbers, give me military, give me those colleges. What exactly is going on to try to, support this argument that the government is putting money and resources into the development of the ARPANET? Everything that comes after this, irrelevant. Don't care. Um, can also take this essay and just simply talk about some of the specifics. How do we go from 1968? How many computers were on that network? I don't remember the exact number, but I do know by 74, it's definitely expanded. There are so many other companies and or colleges and institutions that are in there, Rutgers, MIT, the Army. So you just see the network kind of expanding. But that would be a way to go with that particular one. From the 60 to 70, planes were hijacked in the U.S. during the Cold War and diverted to Cuba. So this is a time frame right here, and so is this. You can just pick one. The Cold War is happening during that. And diverted to Cuba by citizens with left-wing ideals and African Americans. So I expect them to write about leftists and African Americans. And you just give me a list of these plane hijackings. This person hijacked it for this reason. Another one, it should just be a list. Left wing, and you give me 1, 2, 3, 4 examples of hijackings. What did the hijacker say? And that's your evidence that supports this thesis. Nuclear weapons, first created and tested at the end of World War II, began a new era of technological advancements that brought about the atomic bomb. Singular weapon so deadly that it could wipe out millions of lives, resulting in, so I'm lost already. It's a singular weapon so deadly that it resulted in, we know that, limited possible, so there's just way too much. Are we going to talk about any nation using this deadly weapon? Are we going to talk about the creation, the testing? Why is World War II into this? What are you going to say? Hiroshima and Nagasaki began a new era of technological advancements. Cut all of this out. And then give me a list. What were those technological advancements? We're talking about the hydrogen bomb. We're talking about bombs going up to like 100 megatons. The bombs are getting bigger. There's way too much in there. Plane hijackings were notable events. Notable events. I don't know what that means. During the Cold War, were many made desperate. Many. Here we go with that vague language. Made desperate attempts to escape their country as a result of ongoing antagonistic relations between nations. There's so many words here that are, I don't know what nations, antagonistic relations, attempts to escape. You can simply write about this, the attempts to escape, and then you just give me a list. Look at Kirkhow and Holder. They left the United States through a plane hijacking. 50s and 60s auto industry was declining because of changes in consumer demand, policy, environmentalists, and the OPEC embargo. All right, so this isn't that bad. The industry was declining. I would say this is wrong, though. It's the 70s where that decline really starts. Changes in consumer demand, which meant what? That consumers wanted smaller engines. That would work in the 70s. The environmentalists that are pressuring the government, and OPEC embargo. This should be OPEC. So again, some of the things here that I'm noticing, you have to narrow it down. You have way too many big ideas. Keep asking the question, how, why. When you're looking at these big words, it should be something very brief, and that's it. If you're writing something like this, and it's too much. One sentence, be specific. Cold War was an important influence on U.S. politics by, what specifically did it do? By, constant going back and forth. We could talk about the Truman Doctrine as well as the Iron Curtain speech, the Cold War playing out through speeches. You need to be more specific. That's a conclusion that I came up with after reading all of these essays. That's it.